Good afternoon to you. October the 31st. It's a Friday. We're taping this at 12:01 in the afternoon. Happy Halloween if you're listening to it on Halloween. If you get it during the weekend, we appreciate you as always. I am Mike Giardi. This is the All 32 Pod, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network, and also brought to you by the #1 daily fantasy sports app in North America. That is PrizePicks, where it is good to be right. Flying solo today, so I won't keep you too long. Want to go with a little four quarters action for you, and we'll start with what to expect from the Atlanta Falcons offense, and that's our first quarter. The easiest script is I have no idea because they have no idea. The talent Atlanta brings to the table is equal to what you have here in Foxboro, and yet for some reason they can't seem to find it and make it work on a consistent basis from week to week, really. Think about it. They lost to Carolina by 30. Yeah, the same Carolina team that the Patriots beat by 30 or 29, whatever it was. Then they beat the Bills a couple weeks later by 10 points, and it was a resounding victory. Then they turn around 2 weeks after that, and they lose to the Miami Dolphins, who, oh, by the way, mutually parted with their general manager a short time ago, as they are now 2-7. So they really have no clue what's happening from week to week. My suspicion is that Raheem Morris, their head coach, is a terrific defensive coordinator, but now as the second-time head coach, he is proving that maybe like some other guys, maybe even one locally, and offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, that they're just meant to be coordinators and not head coaches. His team is really struggling, and he can't seem to find the right buttons to press. But it goes beyond that. The Falcons, like the Patriots, went quarterback in the 2024 draft, right? They surprised everyone when they selected Michael Penix with the 8th overall pick. Drake Maye was 3rd in that draft. Obviously, Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2. You also had Bo Nix. You had J.J. McCarthy. And then even later on, Spencer Rattler, who at least started the first 8 games of the year for the Saints. That came right after the Penix drafting, like literally a month after they had signed Kirk Cousins to that massive free agent deal, caught Cousins by surprise, caught the league by surprise. But they fell in love with Penix at his workout. They said, we can't pass on the most important position in the game. And then when Cousins was really slow to come back from the Achilles, and looks like, quite frankly, he's cooked as he played last week when Penix was hurt and threw for 173 yards and didn't push the ball down the field, doesn't move well. They turned it over to Penix, and Penix has been exactly he's the embodiment, really, of this Atlanta team in a singular form, because 1 week he's as good as anybody, #1 in success rate 1 week this season in passing. Then the next he's in the bottom third. And that's sort of been what it's like with him. 1 week he's pushing the ball down the field, throwing for over 300 yards. The next he throws for 134. You can't really figure it out because he can really spin it. A part of this really, to me, is the marriage between he and offensive coordinator Zach Robinson. Robinson, of course, comes from the Sean McVay tree. In fact, he was with McVay before taking the job. Patriots were interested in him as the offensive coordinator in the one season under Drake Maye. Obviously, he did not want to come here. He decided to go with Atlanta. But so what Robinson wants to do is he wants to be under center like they do with Matt Stafford, like they did with Jared Goff before in the Rams. Penix is not that guy. He never was at the University of Washington. Before that, the user at Indiana University, he was a shotgun quarterback. So the Falcons spend a ton of time in pistol. They are dead last in play action. They don't throw the ball over the middle of the field. In fact, as a starter, Penix has thrown it less over the middle of the field than any quarterback. And that's the exact opposite of what Zach Robinson wants to do with that offense. And that's the exact opposite of how Sean McVay and the Rams offense has had success, right? Because that's what they do. They attack the middle of the field. Penix is just not comfortable with it. So they're just sort of trying to figure out how to make Penix's skill set work with Robinson's offense. And to this point, wildly inconsistent, like the football team. Last part I think that's important to consider here on Sunday, because if there's one thing I'm sure about regarding the Patriots' pass defense is that they struggle in the middle of the field, right? They struggle with their linebackers and safeties covering that area, or sometimes on crossers. You saw it last week. Marte Mapu, his only defensive snap of the game, gets picked, and it was a legal pick when they were playing man-to-man, and it ends up being a chunk gain on the opening drive to Harold Fannin for the Cleveland Browns. So you can get the Patriots in the middle of the field, but as I just brought up, that's not where Penix wants to go. I don't know how, if you're an offensive coordinator, you don't spam that area of the field when you're playing the Patriots, because that's the place where you can find the most success, especially when you talk about Christian Gonzalez rounding into form on the outside and Carlton Davis. People say disappointment. He's not been a disappointment. There's a play or two every game that you're like, but still pretty good on the outside. hard to throw against the Patriots on the outside, easy to throw in the middle. Atlanta cannot do that. That leads me to the second quarter. Locate Bijan Robinson and make sure that he's not the guy beating you. Every Patriots defender I talked to was like, Bijan's a game changer. We have to know where he is. We have to rally to the football. We have to bring him to the ground. And that's such a great point because there is no back in the league averaging more yards after first contact than Bijan Robinson, 4.6 yards as a rusher after first contact. Those are absurd numbers. Mind you, the last 2 weeks, they haven't been able to get an explosive run from him. Nothing over 10 yards in this case in the last 2 games from Bijan, but like that's the focal point of their offense. They're trying to figure out a way to get him going again like they had him going earlier in the year. And this is strength on strength because the Patriots are the first team since Mike Vrabel's 2021 Tennessee Titans to not allow a lead running back to have at least 50 yards in a game in 8 straight weeks. I talked to Milton Williams. He's like, I didn't even know about this until a week or two ago. Then you talk to some other guys on defense and they're like, oh, we know. And we take pride in it. Like this is something to hang your hat on. And so you're talking about a strength versus strength situation. Bijan is one of the best running backs in the league, does what he does after contact. Patriots have been tremendous against the run, and it's about building layers. And the difference between the way the Patriots used to play run defense for 20-something years with Belichick and then even in the 1 year with Mayo is, hard edges and force everything to the interior. That's not how Mike Vrabel's defense plays. That's not how Zach Core, the interim defensive coordinator, has him playing. They have those edges, knife on the inside, right? They want to force you to bounce outside. And by the way, Bijan good at that. But then the Patriots have layers coming after it. And whether it's Christian Ellis or Jelani Tavai, or it's the safeties coming down into the box, or Marcus Jones, who's been terrific against the run. And by the way, AFC Defensive Player of the Month, well-deserved for him, as well as the contract extension. But those guys bring the layers, and then it's Robert Spillane cleaning up the mess. And Spillane has been, after the first 2 weeks of the season, when he had more missed tackles than makes, has been damn good over the last 6 weeks. 5 of those 6 weeks, he has had double-digit tackles. He cleans up the mess. He fills those gaps, and he makes the tackle. 14 last week against the against the Cleveland Browns. The Tennessee Titans game was the only game that he didn't have double-digit tackles there. When looking at Robinson, though, it's not just the run game. And here's what you have to wonder with Atlanta. Struggling to get that run game going, looking at the Patriots and saying teams are having a hard time doing that. I'm not saying they're going to go away from it. I'm sure they'll test the Patriots in that regard. But if they feel like they're running into a brick wall, then the next option with, okay, how do we get Bijan the ball in space? Well, I mentioned the throwing over the middle of the field. Doesn't seem like that's something Penix wants to do. So it's going to be screens and it's going to be swing passes with Bijan, in which they hope they can isolate him one-on-one with a linebacker, corner, or safety. And like I said, he either makes you miss or he runs through that contact. So the Patriots will have to be on point when it comes to that. And again, they've done a much better job. Ellis in particular, like he didn't pick it up as fast as Spillane did, but he's played much better ball over the last month. And now Tavai is getting involved. There was a swing pass in the game against Cleveland where Tavai sort of widened out and then stopped the play for a 1 yard loss. I think Marcus Jones on a swing pass shot up the field, made the one-on-one tackle for a 2 yard loss. Like those are the kinds of things they're going to have to do and force Penix to look elsewhere and try to beat them elsewhere. Third quarter here. Falcons blitz 48% of the time. That's tops in the National Football League, more than Vance Joseph in Denver. They go crazy. More than Brian Flores in Minnesota. They go crazy. No, Raheem Morris, Jeff Ulbrich, his defensive coordinator, have really dialed it up. Here's the problem for them in this regard. Drake Maye has been awesome against pressure this year. Looking at the numbers, completing nearly 14% more than expected of his passes against pressure this season. 7 touchdowns, 642 yards in pressure situations. He's been awesome across the board against anything, but that's just another example of how quickly he has matured and how much he has taken to the coaching and now has the answers in the Josh McDaniels offense that he didn't necessarily have in the Alex Van Pelt offense. Falcons also play a ton of cover 3, 45%. That is also tops in the league, but they do get wild and woolly on third downs, right? Fire zone blitzes, simulated pressures. They'll play man-to-man behind that. A.J. Terrell, terrific man corner for them, for the Atlanta Falcons. Jesse Bates, their awesome safety. Like, you can't make a mistake around Jesse Bates. he will pick it off. That's something that Drake Maye talked about this week. Like, you have to be careful with that player because he will turn a bad idea, a bad throw, a questionable throw into a turnover. That's something the Patriots are looking to avoid and have done a very good job in this 5-game winning streak. In fact, Maye throwing his first interception last week during that stretch. Their edges are young and really fast. One of my faves, if you listen to this podcast, Jalen Walker, the edge rusher from Georgia. It was linebacker, edge guy in Georgia, playing edge for them, coming back off injury. He can fly up the field. He's had a couple unbelievable looking pass rush moves. Needs to find more consistency. James Pierce, their other first-round pick, who they gave up a lot to go get, and by the way, not looking so good right now because they're not a playoff team. He's been good on the other side, though. He's played pretty well. They both have wheels, so that will be a test for the Patriots tackles, Morgan Moses and Will Campbell. The common theme from those who cover the game this week is the Patriots should have success running the football against this defense, right? The Falcons aren't good at defending it at all. And while they're excellent against pass, to me, with the way that Maye is playing, I'm not taking the ball out of his hands. He has been able to decipher and handle anything pretty much that has been thrown at him over the last 7 weeks, the exception of those 2 turnovers against Pittsburgh. And why would I want to say like, oh, you know what? We're just not, they're good. They allow less than 150 yards passing. We're not going to do that. They haven't seen Drake and the level that Drake's playing at this season. So as much as people say, spam the run, I am still of the mind that Drake Maye is your best player. And Drake Maye should have the ball in his hands and be making those decisions because he's done such a great job at that all year long. And oh, by the way, as he's talked about, as McDaniels talked about, there's still room for improvement. So we're still very early in the Drake Maye breakout process, which is, as a Patriot fan, which I assume you are, if you're listening to this, you have to be really excited about that. There is no quarterback playing better than he is other than maybe Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know that Mahomes has been necessarily doing it for 7 straight weeks. Maye's taken let's call it a mid-wide receiver room, and he's elevated those guys. He's elevated an offensive line that's been better this year, no question. It's an actual professional offensive line as opposed to the one that he played behind last year. But because of his mobility, he's allowed them to look better because he's escaped some pressure situations. And then obviously the deep ball has been ridiculous. Again, the Falcons don't seem to let that happen to them, but Cleveland didn't let it happen to them until they played Drake Maye and the Patriots. And then, as we know, Drake was able to dial it up and go over the top. Before we hit our 4th down, I want to remind you this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. It is football season. We know we're in the middle of it, but you still got the basketball season has started. Hockey season has started. So there's all kinds of sports that you can cross, which I love. You pick 2 players up to 6 to win up to 1,000 times your money. And it's just more or less on some of the statistical numbers. And I'll give you a perfect example of that because I'll give you my picks right now, what I'm looking for this weekend with regards to the Patriots game. I have 4 of them for you. Bijan Robinson, more, 15.5 yards for the longest reception. Drake Maye, more, 13.5 for his longest rush. More, 229.5 yards passing. And then after, he's been fairly quiet 2 of the last 3 weeks. And I know he had a touchdown last week, but just 14 yards receiving. I'm going to go more on Stephon Diggs, 49.5 yards receiving. PrizePicks, simple to play. As I mentioned, you can cash in. It's also the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times. I just did it twice with Drake Maye. So do that. Follow other PrizePick players directly on the app. Copy their lineups in 1 click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone who picks like you, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CLNS to get 50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get 50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks is good to be right. Let's hope I'm back on a winning streak in PrizePicks. 3 or 4 my picks last week. All right, so 4th quarter. I'm here I am telling you, just keep the ball in Drake Maye's hands. Just let Drake Maye continue to cook because that's what he's been doing. That's what you're best at. But I do want to see if Josh McDaniels can find a way to continue to keep TreVeyon Henderson going. We finally had the sort of TreVeyon breakout game, if you will. 10 carries, 75 yards against the Browns. There was the regrettable fumble at the end, but based on Ramondre Stevenson not being at practice the entirety of the week, it looks like Henderson is probably going to be the top dog. Again, they haven't ruled anyone out as of the time of this recording, but we haven't seen Ramondre with the toe all week, so it looks like Henderson going to be the focal point of that backfield. What I thought was great about what they did against Cleveland was attacking the edges with TreVeyon. Less between the center guard gap, but more to the outside. And a lot of what happened came on the right side behind the big boys in Mike Nwenu and Morgan Moses. But it wasn't just those two. It was also getting fullback Jack Westover involved. Westover probably played his best game. I mean, again, he's not a body-moving, traditional James Devlin type fullback, but a better game. Seems like he's getting more comfortable, worked him in there. And then Hunter Henry, who I've been critical of with his blocking, like he puts in effort. He just doesn't move people. Well, he had his, I thought, best game blocking on the edge, and I think helped spring TreVeyon Henderson for a couple of those explosive runs that he had against Cleveland. When you look at this matchup with Atlanta and the younger edges and smaller, some of that savvy might come into play for Hunter Henry, and maybe he can build on what he did last week. But the primary, again, focus here is TreVeyon Henderson and figure out ways, if you're Josh McDaniels, to continue to get him to the outside, continue to get him loose. Henderson deserves a lot of credit for this as well. Talked about it on this podcast, talked about it with Andrew Callahan, talked about it pretty much wherever I go when they ask me, why isn't TreVeyon Henderson playing more? Why hasn't he gotten more production? The game was moving too fast for him, and he was moving too fast for the game. You have to have this bit of patience, right, to see that whole, my guard's about to hook him, so just wait that split second, then there's going to be the seam. Instead, he wanted to rush it, and he'd run right into contact, and you're running into big bodies like that. You're not going to move. You're not going to win. He's a strong dude, but he's 203 pounds. You're not moving a 300-pound defensive lineman who's standing straight up. Like, it's just not going to happen. In this past game against the Browns, better patience, some of those outside runs, you could see him stretch it, and then there's that patience. He'd see that little window, and boom, the foot's in the ground, the quick explosion, and he gets the top speed like that, as we've seen. But he ran through some contact as well. So vision came into play. He was much better with that, much better with running through contact. And he came close to breaking the full distance. It feels like it's coming. We saw that he has that capability in the summer. Obviously, this has been a slower regular season than he or they would have hoped for. But we're only midway through, and good signs based on how he played last week. And you'd like to see him continue to build off that this week. But it will be a challenge for McDaniels, because I don't think you just want to hammer him into the middle, especially if Ramondre's gone. That's Ramondre's role. Maybe Terrell Jennings will pick that up. Maybe they'll call up one of the 3 different guys they brought to the practice squad this week for the running back position to add some depth there. Maybe one of those guys gets touches, but I would imagine it's going to be Henderson and Jennings in the backfield doing that thing. Not sure we'll get to see much of that pony package that the Patriots have played with at this point, unless they want to do something funky with it and maybe put a wide receiver in the backfield. But again, that would change sort of the way the defense would view it. But there are possibilities because, as I mentioned, Atlanta not very good against the run. So you should be able to get something going with the ground game, and that obviously will help ease some of the pressure and some of the burden on Drake Maye. Not that he has had a hard time handling it. I'll give you an overtime thought here for this week, and I mentioned it in the beginning. Chris Grier, general manager for the Miami Dolphins, they mutually agreed to part ways. Dolphins lost last night on a lopsided game. Well, first half wasn't lopsided, but it became a lopsided game with Baltimore at home. The Boo Birds were out. Guys, people were wearing bags over their heads. It was old school. Things are falling apart. We've known that, kind of predicted this for a while. Figured Mike McDaniel would actually be the first head coach fired this year. They claim today there was an announcement after the Grier thing that McDaniel, or at least they leaked it, that McDaniel will continue to coach throughout the rest of the year. Whatever. I guess I see it. I mean, if Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator who's been considered for head coaching jobs, isn't on the top of your list, then you might as well just finish out the year with McDaniel and then decide, are we going to run this back again with him and a new GM, or are we going to let the new GM hire his head coach? But between the Dolphins being 2-7 and the Jets having just one win, and that basically took a miracle, the division has dramatically been reshaped, and the Patriots now on top of that division. Got a phone call this week, did an interview with the Buffalo sports radio station that I've been doing with them for years, but normally we just do it before Patriots games. They wanted to do it before the Chiefs game with the Bills this weekend because they said normally this is the biggest game of the year, and it has been on the calendar for the Bills and Chiefs for the last, 4 or 5 years. They were like, it's not the biggest game anymore. To them, the biggest game is week 15 when Buffalo comes to New England. So that'll just tell you how the fortunes have changed and how that fan base up there is now viewing what you're doing here. It's not smoke and mirrors. There's belief that the Patriots are a real football team and that Buffalo now is going to have to go through New England if they want to reclaim the AFC East title that they've held for a number of years. I mean, they still hold it, but the Patriots currently in first place in the division. But lastly, on Miami, Tom Pelissero from NFL Network, obviously very plugged in, reported that teams had called Miami about a number of players: Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Bradley Chubb, Jaelan Phillips. There may have been a couple other names on that list that I missed, and that Chris Grier was like, no, or the asking price was too high. Now you've got to figure with the trade deadline coming in just a few days and Miami resetting and at 2-7, and maybe thinking like, okay, can we get to the bottom? Can we get the first pick? Can we get the second pick? Would they be willing to move some of those pieces, or more willing, I should say, to move some of those pieces? And my guess is going to be yes. I still think it would be odd to move Waddle or Achane. Waddle signed an extension a couple years ago, so it's still in the middle of that. Achane's still on his rookie deal. Both of those guys are really good football players. I can't envision a scenario, regardless of how bad your football team is, that you'd want to move off of those pieces. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. More looking at Phillips and Chubb and knowing that the Patriots have an interest in adding to the edge position, which has become even thinner with the trading of Keion White, which, by the way, Keion White hadn't provided them much. So it wasn't like it's a major subtraction. In fact, some would say maybe addition by subtraction. But again, they feel like they're a body short there. And don't want to rely on like undrafted free agent Elijah Ponder to be maybe that third piece in the pass rush. And we know Anthony Jennings has been available, and maybe they back off that because they just moved Keion White, but he's not a pass rusher. So they want another pass rusher. And I think you got to circle back and make the phone call to Miami and see what it would take to get Phillips. He would be of those two players, he would be my choice. Chubb is, to me, not the same player. And not that Phillips is the same player he was either. He's had major injuries in each of the last 2 seasons. He might be one of those guys that you're bringing here. You're using him in a part-time role, hoping you can maximize that. And then now you're looking at him saying, oh, we like the way you fit. Don't you like being here? And maybe you do something to lock him up in the future, because he was a first-round pick. And when he's been healthy, he has been a good football player, if not a great one. But that would certainly add to the Patriots' depth at the edge rush position. There'll be other positions that will come up. I think they've made a lot of phone calls so far, and talking to sources around the league. I think they're looking for depth pieces, but I also think that while they're trying to protect and want to protect, because it's year one of the rebuild, and Mike Vrabel sort of reiterated that again this week, they want to protect their first-round pick and their second-round pick and probably their third-round pick. If some name pops free, and A.J. Brown's the one that everybody loves, I don't know why Philly would trade A.J. Brown unless A.J. said, I'm not playing for you anymore, which would seem to be a bold call with the way Philly's playing, and that he signed a $30+ million extension per year with them. But whatever. What I'm saying is, if there's a big name that pops free that's in the prime, that maybe if that price is a little cheaper. Here's one, Chris Olave, right? Like, the Saints are a bad football team. They haven't done anything with Olave. He has the concussion history, so that's a concern. But like, all of a sudden, if Chris Olave is available for a third-round pick, maybe the Patriots would be a little bit more intrigued by a move like that, with what's going to be now in the in the 90s or late 80s, at least in the 80s, in terms of where they're currently projected in the standings, and take a shot saying, hey, we had that guy. Maybe what's going to be a playoff run becomes a deeper playoff run, especially when you look at the AFC and think it's pretty wide open. Obviously, Kansas City's playing a lot better. Baltimore, now healthy, could be a problem, but they still have a big hole to dig out of. But there are opportunities for the Patriots to have a home playoff game. There's opportunities I guess still to be the number 1 seed. It's currently the Colts. The Patriots are number 2. So you can't rule it out, but I would still think more about distressed assets or things that are not going to cost nearly the price that fans would want them to pay. You want AJ Brown. Who wouldn't want AJ Brown? They're just, are we in the right place in the build for that? So that's going to wrap up this edition of the All 32 pod. Appreciate you joining me in the solo effort. You have to hear my voice droning on. We'll get this done in 26 minutes or whatever. For those listening to the show, we ask you to subscribe to the podcast, like and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel where you can get this show and other great Patriot content. Callahan, Bedard, the whole gang, Taylor, the whole gang, Kadlick. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. I want to thank Harrison for producing. I want to thank you for watching. We'd love a 5-star review. We've got some good ones in there. Don't be afraid to jump in. We obviously bring you good guests at the beginning of the week. Callahan and I pair together on Mondays as well. And then, Thursdays, Fridays, a bit of grab bag. Sometimes me solo, sometimes me with guests. But we appreciate you, as always. Appreciate Harrison. And we will talk to you next week. And we will see if the Patriots have now won 6 in a row. Have a good weekend.